It was just a normal day in Ponyville. Shadow was out for a walk by himself since he preferred to be alone. Even back when he was in his old world, he usually was by himself. But it has been 3 years since he ended up in Equestria. He was fighting along with his old friends back home against Dr. Eggman. But when Eggman used the Chaos Control, somehow it made him cause a travel from his world to a new one. And after he woke up in the new world, he had no idea exactly if he was even still on his own planet. But after he found out he was not, he in fact took it as a big shocker, but also realized none of his old friends had ended up on the same place. But even when he came in contact with Fluttershy and her friends, Twilight actually offered him as a place at her castle since he had nowhere else to go. He accepted the offer, of course, but even when he is in a castle, he's usually staying in his own room or goes to the castle library when he is alone. Because for most part of his time, he spent almost 99% of the time just alone. Either he's walking around the town or he's out running or doing a lot of exercise. But one of the things that he realized when he ended up in Equestria, that he didn't have his own Chaos Emerald. Somehow, it was trapped in the other world. After all, that was captured by Eggman from the start. But another thing he didn't also brought with him was his firearms. So that was another thing that he also quite has felt a little bit upset, that none of his firearms wasn't with him. But he didn't. After a while, he realized there was no need for any firearms, because Equestria was a quite peaceful place. There were no conflict at all. There were no wars at all. Sure, there had been a few villains in the past who tried to take over, but not as much any databases main villain that were trying to take over. But after a while, Shadow actually got used to living in a quite a peaceful society. Even though he doing a lot of martial art training to just keep up with his training and maintain his health and all that. But shortly after about almost 3 years, even his new friends was actually a little bit worried about Shadow. Because one evening when it was just him, Twilight, and Spike having dinner, she commented that she had noticed that Shadow is always by himself for most of the time. And he said, back home, I was always alone. I had noticed, even I had friends, but I preferred to just be by myself. He was actually not serious about having anything quite serious otherwise. He considered Twilight and her friends as close acquaintance. But if there was anyone at any point that he was considering as more like a rival, it would have been Rainbow Dash. Because it happened from time to time that they raced against each other in speed. Even though that Rainbow had one advantage of her flying, and of course of the terrain. But Shadow, he was always had his advantage of his own speed. But after a while, he had started to like living in this new world. But it happened from time to time that he even left Ponyville, sometimes for a couple of days, maybe even after a couple of weeks in a row. He would just left town, travel around, just doing some exploring, and always come back though. But there was one thing that he often did. When he ran out of town, was just out for running, he always stopped by the lake, sat down under a tree, and looked at the sky, and always have one thought in mind. Fluttershy. Fluttershy has always been so kind to him, even though he sometimes wonders if he actually scaring her, because his behavior or his personality is not like any of the other of her friends. He is always speaks what's on his mind and always takes offensive if someone says it, if it was a joke or something. But Fluttershy, she was complete opposite from that. And in fact, she never actually had the same effect on him. Every time when he is near or even around her company, it's, it's something that reminded him of Maria Robotnik back in his youth. He actually has started to have some feelings for Fluttershy, but he hasn't even told anyone about it. Well, except for Twilight, and she told him that maybe one day he should telling her. But there's just another thing about it. If he would end up be with Fluttershy forever, it was just only one issue. He is immortal. He would outlive Fluttershy. And knowing how he would felt lonely if she passes away of old age or accident. But Fluttershy was always in his mind, and even Twilight's words of him to him always to listen to his heart and take the opportunity to tell her how he feels for Fluttershy. Even though sometimes he just wants to just tell her, but sometimes he doesn't even actually get the right words out. Or he just simply start talking about something else. And he always in the end regrets that he never actually had the moment to telling her. But one day when he was just out for just of a one running around or walking around in Ponyville, he actually was thinking about telling Fluttershy. And as he was just walking around, minding his own business, or he was actually in deep thoughts, when he realized he had been out walking and actually left town and somehow ended up in at Fluttershy's cottage. Fluttershy was really surprised to see him there. She was actually just taking care of her animal friends. She asked him if he wanted to come in for some tea, which he accepted. They sat down and just had a small talk. It was then when Shadow asked Fluttershy if she was interested in any pony. She was a little bit surprised of the question, since most of her friends knew that she wasn't taken or wasn't interested in any pony. She asked why she even thought about it. Well, he said, well, considering how much time you spend with Discord, she smiled and said, with almost like a giggle, and said, Discord is a friend of mine, and he's already dating Celestia. I thought you knew that. He nodded and I see Discord like a big brother actually, more as a friend. Oh, I see, said Shadow. Well, there is one thing I'd like to tell you, he said. He didn't know what exactly to say, but then she interrupted and said, is there something about me, if I ask? He nodded, and he couldn't say actually exactly by word that he wanted to do, but then he said that he liked her more than as a friend. He even wanted to go out with her if she wanted, but he understood that she wasn't interested. But she said she would like that. So they decided to go out to a restaurant that same evening, and he will meet her by the restaurant. And when he came back to the castle, he told Twilight, and she was just overjoyed because she was like, it's about time you telling her. Yeah, you have a point, Twilight. I don't, even though I have all the time in the world, but it's just, you know what time who I am. She nodded. In that evening, Fluttershy walked up to the restaurant, and she was wearing a light blue dress and a ribbon in her mane. And Shadow was wearing a tuxedo, and he was stunned to see her. He even said how beautiful she looked. She smiled, and they just had a great time, in fact. They had a lot of fun at the restaurant. He even accompanied her way back so that she came home safely. And ever since then, they spent a lot more time. They started to actually start dating more officially. After about 3 months, they actually made it official. They were just happy to be with each other. But it happened that they didn't see each other so often, almost every day. It's because of her duty as a teacher at the School of Friendship and at her taking care of her animals, friends, and the animal sanctuary that she made. And of course, spent time with her family. But there was just one thing. She actually introduced her younger brother, Zephyr Breeze, to Shadow. Even though Zephyr Breeze was actually quite interested to know more about Shadow, and when he realized that he couldn't even make any particular style of his hair or mane because it was just firm as it is. But he actually bonded over Shadow for some reason. And their relationship between him and Fluttershy only grew stronger. But there was just one small event happened. During the first winter of them being together, Fluttershy ended up having a cold, which later developed to the flu, the pony flu. But her condition got even worse and worse, so bad that she had been put into the hospital. And that was even not the worst of it. Her condition was even getting worse and a lot more worse. She was only one of the handful of ponies who actually had the same condition. And when Shadow was told from Twilight that Fluttershy may not even survive, he was devastated. For once he had found his true happiness, and now he was going to lose it again. He asked her if there was any cure, treatment. She said that there is, but unfortunately the hospital had run out of it. And they had ordered for a new shipment, but the fact was only one problem. Currently there was a bad snowstorm in that area around Baltimore, where the train would have to be transported all the way to Manhattan, from Manhattan to Ponyville. But since the bad snowstorm had been going on for almost the entire day, the train had to be put on hold. And according to the Twilight, what she told us from the doctor, that Fluttershy may not survive other 2 more days or not. Shadow was not happy with this. So he took the most drastic change to his mind. He literally left the castle middle of the night, ran all the way to Baltimore. Even it took him almost an entire day. He left a message back at the castle to telling Twilight where he was going to. She was actually shocked that he even went this. But he managed to arrive to Baltimore. And at the time when he did, the storm had passed, but the train was so severely covered in snow, it was still about taking the train at least a few hours, at least, to have the snow removed. So he literally used his speed, ran around the train, and all the snow was eventually gone, less than 5 minutes. The train conductor and the others were actually happy, and the medicine was shipped or transported on a train He was actually given a ticket, and he decided to just took the train back to to Ponyville. From first to Manhattan, he took another train with the cure to Ponyville. He was actually greeted by Twilight at the station. She was first a little bit mad at him just did this, but she realized and really know exactly why he took the risk. It's because of his true love for Fluttershy. Without him, or without her, he would have probably just sealed inside himself again. He probably would have been more insulated himself as was before. Ever since he started dating Fluttershy, he has started to change of his personality. He started to open up more. He started spending more time with his new friends. If he had lost Fluttershy, he had randomly just started to slowly insulate himself insulation again. He would stop to spend time with his new friends. He most likely would have left Ponyville altogether, going somewhere else to live insulation for the rest of eternity. And of course, when Fluttershy was later was told from Twilight what Shadow did, she thanked him for seconds to do this for her, and he told her, I'd rather do this over and over to save you, sweetie. Ever since then, she made a full recovery from this flu, and only about a year later, he proposed to Fluttershy, and she said yes immediately. Despite it only being together for just 1 year, Shadow felt he was ready to settle down. And she and Fluttershy, she had actually asked Rainbow to be her maid of honor, and Spike to be Shadow's best man. Twilight performed the ceremony, of course. Even after the ceremony, every pony could see how happy they were together. And later, during the party, Discord actually had one gift for Fluttershy. He said that he could make her immortal, so that Shadow wouldn't outlive her and be alone. She accepted it almost immediately. And after all this, the relationship between the marriage between Shadow and Fluttershy was always a strong one. They even went to Las Vegas for 2 weeks for a honeymoon. They just had a great time enjoying some of the magical shows, enjoying the rides and romantic dinners, all kinds of things. But after being married for about 3 years, both Shadow and Fluttershy wanted to start a family. But it was only a small problem. They couldn't have any children of their own together. So they decided to adopt. They adopted twin brothers at a local orphanage in Ponyville. And they were actually very shy around his new parents, especially Shadow, considering that he was not even a pony. But after seeing how tough and strong he were, they actually started liking him even more. In fact, that they were even both Pegasus, like their mother. But after being married for another 2 more years, they decided they wanted to have some more children. So they adopted 2 daughters, twin sisters. So now we had 2 pairs of twins. And Fluttershy couldn't have been happier for once. In one of the mother perspective, Shadow trained the twin boys in martial art, well, in the best way that he could. He even did that the same thing with his daughters, so they could defend themselves and others if they want to come to need for that. And Fluttershy, after all this, especially what Shadow did for her all those years ago, risking his own life, even though wouldn't have much changed, even though he wouldn't have much died from it either. But he would have done anything to save her life. And that was she made always grateful for, especially now that she is also immortal, and she couldn't be happier to be with the one that she loved the most of all. Shadow, though, despite even years before he even ended up in Equestria, when he was still living at the space colony Ark, having his best friend Maria. But after she was killed, he became insolent himself and almost solitude. But after he came to Equestria, met his new friends, especially Fluttershy, he opened up more. And now that he's married with Fluttershy, he has completely changed his personality. But despite he can sometimes be a little bit stubborn, but he's still more open. He's just happy to be with the one that he loved the most of all in the whole world. And this is how Fluttershy and Shadow, for their true love, got a big family together. The end.